When we are talking about famous astronomers, we are mostly talking about people like Galileo Galilei, Edwin Hubble, Stephen Hawking, or Nicolaus Copernicus. Did you notice any similarity? These people are all men. Do not get me wrong, they are indeed responsible for some great inventions and are huge visionaries. But it's really the time to talk about how did a woman influence the field filled with stars. Today, we are going to talk about a woman who was more than capable to be the first in Czechoslovakia, a woman with passion in her heart who was as shiny, as bright as the comets she was studying and loved. My name is Markéta, and I am here to put you up to date with some interesting facts. Now, I really hope you are sitting comfortably as we are about to discover the story of a woman with the nickname Comet, Ľudmila Pajdušáková. Ľudmila Pajdušáková was born on 29th of June 1916 in a small village called Radošovce, which is located in Trnava region that lies in western Slovakia. Her father was a salesman. Ľudmila wanted to be a teacher, and to reach that goal, she was studying in grammar school in Kláštor pod Znievom, which is about 150 kilometers away from her home village. After the grammar school, she went to study on Teachers Institute and she started her way as a teacher. While teaching, she was studying astronomy on the Faculty of Science in Bratislava until 1950, when she has decided that she wants to dedicate her life to astronomy. She started to work in the State Observatory in Skalnaté Pleso in 1944. It was this magical place where she has discovered 5 comets, all of them are bearing her name. After a long road, she has become the headmaster of the Astronomical Institute of Slovak Academy of Sciences on Lomnický štít. As Slovak Academy of Sciences stated, before she became a headmaster, she was focusing on the observation of meteors. Most of these were the swarm meteors. She has reached an incredible amount of observed meteors per shot. It was more than 11,000 meteors on 10,000 shots, which means that she has averagely caught 1 meteor per 30 hours. Such an exposition was the second biggest after the one reached at Harvard. At the same time, she was the founder of a new astronomical interest, the observation of asteroids and their position. After she became a head of the institute, her primary focus was the sun and its crown. She was not only making it up in the observatory, she was also supporting the amateur observatories and helped to spread the science and astronomy to people. She has also written about 600 articles about the observation of the universe. Pajdušáková has also got a lot of awards, one of the most famous being the Copernicus Medal and the Kepler Medal. This incredible woman has also been a part of 20 Czechoslovak and worldwide astronomical organizations, just as a part of the Communistic Party and Women's Union. Just as Lenka Moravčíková, the director of the movie series Prvá, Female First, has written in the article dedicated to Pajdušáková, on which she has used informations gathered from the people Pajdušáková has been working with, Ľudmila is a character of Man Rose, the assistant of a predecessor whom she cheats out of a position. A woman who knows how to cry on purpose. A dreamy woman philosophizing about the universe in the magazine Živena. A mother breastfeeding child at the highest place in Slovakia. As a young communist, she confirms that she has not yet seen God in heaven. An excellent cook of Dukatové buchtičky for foreign visits to the observatory. Craftswoman able to repair any cable cabin in Skalnaté Pleso. A woman who threatens people who use cabin cables with an umbrella fight if they do any damage. A popularizer of science who can catch the crowds of young, promising astronomers. Absent-minded home seamstress. an interview from Tatra bars gossiping about her employees. The bestseller of jokes around, a lover of a good cognac and midnight dancing on the tables. Disappointed visionary with the idea of a Bratislava planetarium. A crazy boss controlling her employees. A collector of restaurant classes. And, lastly, a lady who dies of an unknown illness after a year of retirement. Nothing is probably describing Ľudmila more than her nickname Comet. After all, she has discovered 5 of them herself. And the comets were as it goes. Pajdušáková, Rothbard, Weber, C/1946 K1, May 30th, which was also discovered on 1946. Pajdušáková, Mrkos, C/1948 E1, March 13, 1948, and 45B/Honda Mrkos Pajdušáková, which is a comet of the type 45B, and this one was discovered on December 7th, 1948. Pajdušáková C 1951 C1, 5th February 1951, and finally Pajdušáková C/1953 X1, the 3rd December 1953. On the screen, we might see a video of the comet 45B/Honda Mrkos Pajdušáková, which was filmed in 2017. She has used a sorter of Czechoslovak production Comet Binner 25/100 to find the comets. After the Second World War, she and her colleagues have been invested in the search of new comets, and this was indeed very fruitful. As a Slovak science popularizing portal Veda na dosah has stated, of the 70 comets discovered in the years 1946 till 1959 all over the world, 18 fell to the observatories at Skalnaté pleso and Lomnický štít. The Mount Palomar Observatory in the US recorded 13 discoveries, and the rest of the world's observatories had just like 5 or fewer of each. Your findings, which also counts in the ones which were only to be seen on the southern hemisphere, which was incredibly rare. This made Czechoslovakia the comet supremacy in the International Astronomical Union in Rome, 1954. The first comet of the Tatra series was the comet 1946, second Pajdušáková, Rothbard, Weber, which was discovered on May 30th, 1946 from Skalnaté pleso, and, on the other hand, the last comet was 1959, 9 Mrkos, discovered on December 3rd, 1959 on Lomnický štít. As the Veda na dosah portal states, according to available sources, 3 of the discovered comets were the short period ones. Comet P/Honda Mrkos Pajdušáková has an orbital period of just 5 years and is probably related to the Alpha Capricornid meteor shower. Comet P/Tuttle Jacobini Kresak belongs to comets that interrupt long periods of calm with a sudden, unexpected increase in brightness. In 1973, it temporarily increased its brightness up to 4,000 times during 2 explosions. This comet, as well as Comet P/Perrine Mrkos, involved the discovery of long-lost periodic comets not observed since the beginning of the century. The most beautiful of the Tatra comets was undoubtedly the comet 1957 5 Mrkos. It formed a broad dust tail and resembled Comet Hale-Bopp in its plasma and dust tail structure. together with Comet 1955 3 Mercos, it was found with the naked eye at dusk near the Sun. These findings weren't the only thing Pajdušáková exceeded at. She was also interested in the Sun and its corona. As the Portal Encyclopedia Britannica states, corona, outermost region of the Sun's atmosphere, consisting of plasma, which is hot ionized gas, has a temperature of approximately 2 million kelvins and an extremely low density. The corona continually varies in size and shape as it is affected by Sun's magnetic field. The solar wind, which flows radially outward through the entire solar system, is formed by the expansion of the coronal gases and only ends at the heliopause. As director of the Astronomical Institute of the Slovak Academy of Sciences, she devoted herself to the study of the Sun's atmosphere, the periodicity, and the variability of solar activity. She dealt with the methodology and interpretation of observing the Sun, the decomposition of variable phenomena on the Sun, and the relationship to cyclical changes in solar activity. She also addressed the question of the east-west asymmetry of the green corona and sunspots, which she explained by observation effects, not the real state of the Sun. She attributed the decrease in the area of large sunspots and the number of solar eruptions near the central meridian of the Sun to the consequences of the negative influence of Earth's position, its gravity, on solar activity, or the apparent effects from the geometry of observing phenomena on the spherical surface of the Sun. She published the obtained results in 20 scientific works. One of these works is the Before the Flight to the Moon, which was published in Slovak Publishing House of Political Literature in 1958, from which comes the following article. It is understandable that the first trips to the moon will not be as comfortable for the man as in the future truly interplanetary spaceships, which will actually form a wall-flying city with laboratories, factories, and so forth. In the large interplanetary spaceships, the natural exchange of oxygen in the atmosphere of the spaceship is envisaged by growing plants, which will also provide fresh vitamins. These plants will thrive well in the hull because they will have a constant abundance of sunlight. Beware, however, of jumping on the moon. How will it actually be if they, or the astronauts, sink ankle or knee deep into the thick, fine dust that covers virtually the entire surface of the moon? The swirling dust will make walking very uncomfortable, because when you walk, the fine, swirling dust will rise considerably higher than on the Earth and will descend to the surface about 6 times slower. So it will be not a pleasant walk.
Ja som si povedal. Budem udávať. Ja som si povedal. Budem udávať.
After we got to know Pajdušáková from her work and her life, let's question a very interesting aspect of the era she has been living at and the science during these days. How was it in Czechoslovakia during the reign of the hammer and the sickle? I would say, let's start from how it was for an ordinary person or the consumer of the science, not the producer. Let me briefly describe to you what has my mom always told me about the regime. Just for the illustration, my mom has been born in 1974 and she is a part of the generation they have called Husákové děti, or children of Husák.
This term is describing the wave of children that has been born during the normalization processes during the reign of Gustav Husak. This normalization was to increase birth rate. But to the point. My grandfather was a tailor who has his own tailor's workshop. It was a very popular workshop and the main source for the family's income. You have to keep in mind that this was all in the era when government has lied to people, luring them to give their private land in an exchange for coupons. The government has said to people that the coupons can help them more than having their own land on their own. Many have lost the roofs over their heads, and this is also what has happened to my grandparents. And my grandfather was actually spied on by the STB police officers for railing against the government. The STB, or Štátna bezpečnosť, is a secret police that has consisted of normal people who were called udavači or snitches, but also from formal police officers. These people were telling on everyone who has been doing something that was illegal in these times. Just like listening to Western music, having anti-communistic ideas and spreading them, or planning emigrations. When you were caught, you were about to be tortured by them or straightforwardly sent to gulags or forced into exile, and your identity will be forever erased. If you had done something like this, which was against the regime, the punishment was actually set to punish the entire family, not only the one who did it, which was why a lot of people was not allowed to schools or etc.
Píšte všetci modrým perom. Iná farba nebude. Píšte všetci rovnako. Rovnaké a rovnaké o. Rovnaké písmo, rovnaké vzdialenosti. Kúpte si všetci modrý atrament. Píšte všetci modrým perom. Iná farba nebude. Píšte všetci rovnako. Rovnaké a rovnaké o. Rovnaké písmo, rovnaké vzdialenosti. Kúpte si všetci modrý atrament.
In the science, it was not any better. A lot of people in the high positions did not have the needed education to occupy the positions. This was fatal in, for example, the Chernobyl nuclear catastrophe. Everything that had to speak in a negative manner about the Republic was strictly censored. And in these times was Ľudmila on the highest post. As we will hear later, some are of the impression that she was certainly not capable of being on such a high post. Some are condoning her as one of the best. Now let's move on to the testimonies of people who knew her during her life. This controversial woman is both loved and hated. She is loved by those whom she has chosen, hated by those whom she has kicked out of the job in the Astronomical Institute of Slovak Academy of Sciences. One of the people whom loved her was an astronomer Wojciech Rusin, who was one of the university students she has took into the observatory into her guard. Not only Lenka Moravčíková done an interview with this man, the same was done by Helena Dvořáková, who is the editor of the magazine Pravda.
It all depends on one's perspective. And no headmaster has an easy time of it. It was no different at the Astronomical Institute of the Slovak Academy of Sciences at Skalnaté Pleso, where I came to work in 1959 as an engineer, right after graduation in Kežmarok. One of the impulses were the magnificent lectures of Ľudmila Pajdušáková and her colleagues from Skalnaté Pleso in the former workers' house in Kežmarok. This was the time of the first satellite flight into space, and we young students, full of energy and bold plans, wanted to be cosmonauts. We devoured the words about space and asked tricky questions, something I know today from my personal experience. Upon my arrival at Skalnaté Pleso, there were about 12 of us, and the situation was good. The director had only been in office for a year, and the situation in the observatory was, after a turbulent period since 1951 or so, beginning to calm down. Work meetings included not only coffee and sandwiches, but even a glass of wine. Now and then, a word of criticism was hurled here and there for not fulfilling tasks, but it was meant well. Ľudmila Pajdušáková was very friendly and hospitable. Often, she invited guests to her home for pierogi or brinzové halušky she cooked excellently. The Astronomical Institute was beginning to be very well perceived not only scientifically, but also socially, thanks to Dr. Pajdušáková, and this has lasted to this day. Staff was added and work began on the completed observatory on Lomnický štít from 1961. Administration was added in Vila Tatry in Tatranská Lomnica, and 5 people worked in Bratislava from 1955 onwards. Departments were divided, and as it goes, everyone wanted to take as much of the shared cake as they could for themselves, both the finances and the benefits. All of this caused a split in the collective, but not with tragic consequences. But management work was, of course, more difficult. In the 70s, there were also occasional conflicts. As I see it today, some of the personal conflicts between some individuals and the headmistress stemmed from the problems of the time. No matter how Dr. Pajdušáková was, she really was quite violent at times, which she later regretted. She was not a bad headmistress. She did not tolerate lying and cheating, had a sense for the workers' family problems, and cared very much about people's welfare, the development of the workplace, fights for apartments, the building of a new astronomical stand in Tatranská Lomnica, and so on. As a director, she supported every good idea and promoted it passionately. The young workers kept coming, and I remember that once, one of them, a now deceased colleague, said to me, "She was like a second mother to us." He was right. I have had 7 directors at the Institute so far, and whether anyone likes it or not, Pajdušáková seemed to me, taking into account her strengths and weaknesses, to be one of the best. You ask, what has she given me professionally? I used to work for her. I helped at night, for example, to observe the stars or the moon occulting the stars. The observatory at Skalnaté Pleso was also involved in tracking the satellites in the early days of the space age. Nowadays it is done by radars. Dr. Pajdušáková has given me freedom, which is extremely important for a scientist. Her perseverance in the search for comets. Statistics at the time said that to find one, you had to sit behind a binary for around 300 hours at night in the cold, and in the photographic mapping of the starry sky, which she did with Antonín Mrkos, her later husband. For her, astronomy meant everything, from her arrival at Skalnaté Pleso in 1944 to her death. She started working first as an observing engineer, but completed her university studies and observed space objects. She was devoted. When she and her son Ivan were home alone, Mrkos was in Antarctica or on duty on Lomnický štít. She took the child with her on work trips. She dedicated herself to the popularization of science, lectured, published, wrote a book about Stefanik. She struggled with all her strength to build a worthy stand of astronomy in Tatranska Lomnica. It was only after her death that she succeeded, but she prepared all the materials for the construction, and it was also possible thanks to her acquaintances in higher places. She also pushed for the construction of the People's Observatory and Planetarium in Bratislava. Observatories were built, some were liquidated after 1990, unfortunately, but the planetarium in Bratislava was not. This is a great loss for our capital city. Ľudmila Pajdušáková has lived up to the words of M.R. Stefanik, who said, "Astronomy is the measure of a nation's culture." She believed it.
But besides a man who considered Pajdušáková as his second mother, there was also a lot of negativism around her. In this case, we are mostly talking about a man called Jiří Grigar, who is one of the most important popularizer of science in Czech Republic, and he has said that Ľudmila Pajdušáková did not have any spectacular value for the astronomical field other than finding the comets. She was completely unaware of what was going on in astronomy. It was really the political trajectory that made her visible at the time. She also threatened the Slovak astronomers at the observatory terribly, dismissing at least 2 of them for political reasons, while others fled from her to Bratislava or Košice. He says about Pajdušáková, whom he had met in the observatory while he had practical lessons to attend there. Another thing Jiří Grigar has said about Ľudmila and her work is that he considers her not to be a very good scientist, as her work have been cited only 12 times, which is, as he said, almost as if she didn't publish anything at all. But why am I including this all in this podcast? It's all because while this figure has been very important to Slovak astronomy, she was also very controversial. It is believed that she has started her career as a headmaster after she has responded to a newspaper post about her job offer. The job in an observatory was a job which had to be very isolated from the others. The space was surely filled with a lot of drama. Looking at the political situation in Czechoslovakia, we can't even totally abandon the thought of political interests in this very much enclosed space. And there we are, at the end of the story of a fierce, beautiful and strong woman who has been a pioneer to the field of astronomy and showed a way to new generations of astronomers and helped them to become the people they have wished to be the most, scientists. We have also covered her discoveries of the comets and the sun. Not only this, we have also talked about the communist era and how did it influence people and science after what we have given a word to people who knew Pajdušáková and they have told us about her from both sides. Thank you all for watching this with me. If you like this, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more interesting content. Take care of yourself and remember to drink an appropriate amount of water. Bye!